At my sister's wedding, I was seated in the hallway, so I left. What happened next shocked everyone. Looks like someone forgot to send you the real invitation. That's what my sister Vanessa said when I found my name card tucked behind a potted fern, 3 feet from the kitchen entrance. The Riverside Manor in Asheville smelled like gardenias and expensive catering. I could hear the string quartet warming up inside, testing notes for the processional. My mom smoothed down her peach-colored dress. My dad studied his shoes like they held the answers to questions he'd never ask. I held tighter to the gift I'd stayed up wrapping the night before, straightened my burgundy dress that suddenly felt too bright, too hopeful, and made a choice. No scene, no begging. I just stood, grabbed my purse, and walked straight out those double doors into the North Carolina evening. 4 minutes later, the music stopped cold and someone screamed loud enough to crack crystal. Here's how it all went down. That September air in Asheville hit different, you know? The kind that smells like mountain rain and old money mixed together. My sister Vanessa had picked the Riverside Manor because it looked like something out of a magazine, the type of venue where people take selfies just to prove they got past the velvet ropes. The reception hall had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the French Broad River, all done up with white roses and those fancy floating candles in hurricane glasses. Every table inside sparkled under chandeliers that probably cost more than my car. Mine, apparently, was stationed next to the swinging kitchen doors where servers rushed past with trays. I'd made the drive down from Charlotte alone, 2.5 hours of replaying Mom's voicemail in my head. Stephanie, please? Just this once. Can we have one day without complications? It's Vanessa's special day. That's all I'd ever been to them. A complication. A footnote that needed managing. Don't speak too loud. Don't need too much. Don't remind anyone there's a second daughter in this family. Growing up, we were textbook opposites. The princess and the placeholder. Vanessa collected pageant crowns and homecoming tiaras while I collected library books nobody noticed I'd read. She'd throw tantrums and get jewelry. I'd solve problems and get a pat on the head if I was lucky. Mom called me low maintenance. Dad said I was self-sufficient. They both meant invisible worked better for everyone. The last family gathering I'd actually attended was Christmas 2 years back. I remember the house smelling like cinnamon candles and that pine cleaner Mom bought in bulk. Vanessa was skiing in Aspen with her new boyfriend's family, and for those 3 days, the house felt breathable. Mom had asked me to grab some old photographs from her bedroom closet. Instead, I found her leather journal, the expensive kind with the magnetic clasp. I opened it thinking maybe I'd find recipes or travel plans. What I found was page after page of Vanessa. Vanessa's first recital. Vanessa's favorite restaurants. Vanessa's college graduation party planning. 23 years of entries, and my name appeared exactly twice. Once when I was born, and once when I graduated high school early. No birthdays. No achievements. Nothing. When I asked Mom about it later, she laughed like I'd told a joke. Oh honey, you never seemed to need that kind of attention. You were always so independent. That's when I learned the difference between being forgotten and being erased on purpose. I thought about that journal while walking toward the reception hall, my heels clicking against the marble floors that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Through those massive glass doors, I could see them all posed for the photographer. Mom in her peach silk, Dad adjusting his boutonniere for the 100th time, and Vanessa absolutely glowing in her strapless Vera Wang. She glanced back once, caught my eye, and gave me that smile. You know the one. The kind you give to waitstaff you're about to undertip. The wedding coordinator cornered me with her iPad. Miss Bennett, she asked, voice all syrupy professionalism. I nodded. Her smile flickered when she scrolled to my name. You're assigned to Station 7. Hallway seating. I actually laughed out loud, waiting for the punchline. It never came. Hallway seating. By the kitchen doors where servers were already rushing past with appetizer trays. I followed her gesture toward the small fold-out table with the wobbly leg. From that spot, I had a perfect view of the whole reception through the glass, every perfect moment, every Instagram-worthy second. But there was a wall between us. Always had been. I set down my gift, a small box wrapped in silver paper that I'd agonized over at Target for an hour, and just stared through that glass like it was a movie screen. Inside, Vanessa posed with her champagne flute. Mom fussed with her veil. Outside, I sat in the draft from the AC vent and told myself what I'd been saying for 26 years, you're fine. You don't need their validation. But the truth sat heavy in my chest, solid and undeniable. Maybe I didn't need them. But that didn't give them the right to treat me like a typo that needed correcting. I tried blending into the wallpaper like usual, but hallways and event venues aren't exactly peaceful. Staff kept pushing through those kitchen doors with bins of dirty plates, laughing about some drama in the prep kitchen. Every time those doors swung open, I caught glimpses. The chandeliers. The dancing. My mother's hand on Vanessa's shoulder like she was presenting a trophy she'd won. Then the energy shifted. I looked up and there she was. Vanessa, walking straight toward me, bouquet in hand, that cathedral-length veil trailing behind her like a cape. She stopped just outside the doorway, and I could see both versions of her reflected in the glass. The adored bride inside. The calculating sister outside. "Well," she said, tilting her head in that way she'd perfected since middle school. "I guess they finally figured out the right seating arrangement for you." My mouth went dry. What's that supposed to mean? She gave me that smile again. The one she'd used before stealing my 8th grade boyfriend, my college acceptance spotlight, my parents' attention at every single family dinner. "Guess you just don't count, Steph." The words landed soft but cut deep. Guess you just don't count. Like I was a math problem that didn't add up. For 3 seconds, I couldn't speak. My throat closed up the way it does when you've swallowed too much pride for too many years. Behind her, the photographer was calling out, "Bride. We need you for the family formals." She didn't budge. She wanted the reaction. The tears, the begging, the proof that she still had power over me. I didn't give it to her. I just looked at her long enough to watch that confident smile start to crack around the edges. "You know what's crazy?" I said quietly. "There was always enough room for both of us. You're just the one who keeps making the space smaller." Her eyes went sharp. "Oh please, Stephanie. Not everything is a therapy session about you. This is my wedding day. You could at least pretend to be happy for once in your miserable life." I laughed. Not a big laugh, just air escaping through a crack in a dam. "You literally banned me from the reception room. What exactly am I celebrating here?" For half a second, the mask slipped. I saw something flicker across her face. Fear, maybe. Or the dawning realization that I wasn't playing the game anymore. Then she straightened up, chin lifted like she was posing for Vogue. "You always make things weird, Steph. Mom was right. You make everything difficult just by existing." Mom. That word hit harder than it should have. I pictured that leather journal again, all those pages filled with Vanessa's life and absolutely none of mine. "I'm not difficult," I said evenly. "You just hate that I can see through the performance." She rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't stick. "God, you sound just like Dad when he's drunk. Bitter and pathetic. Face the facts, Stephanie. Nobody here needs you. Not at this wedding. Not ever." She spun on her designer heels, leaving a cloud of Chanel No. 5 and contempt in her wake. I watched her walk back inside, that white dress sweeping the floor, and felt that familiar burning behind my eyes. But this time it felt different. Cleaner somehow. Like a fever breaking. When the doors closed behind her, I picked up that silver box from my wobbly table. The gift I'd chosen so carefully, wrapped with patience I didn't know I still had. I ran my finger along the ribbon once, then slipped it into my bag. If they didn't want me at the table, fine. But I wasn't leaving with nothing. Not this time. For the next 20 minutes, I just sat there with my fingers pressed against the smooth edge of that box, listening to the muffled bass line pumping through those ballroom doors. It was supposed to be their first dance, that picture-perfect moment everyone would post about. I imagined Mom dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, Dad clapping awkwardly offbeat, Vanessa soaking up applause like she was born for spotlights. The same scene I'd watched my whole life from the sidelines. But sidelines have edges. And edges cut both ways. I stood up slowly. My reflection caught in that glass panel looked composed, maybe even elegant if you didn't notice the tightness around my eyes. Inside my bag, the silver gift felt heavier than it should. I'd wrapped it the night before in my apartment, tying that ribbon tighter than necessary because my hands needed something to do while my mind raced. It wasn't just a present. It was evidence. The kind that could shatter the carefully constructed image Vanessa had built out of lies and my family's willful blindness. For weeks ago, I'd run into one of her old co-workers at the South Park Mall food court. Totally random, one of those awkward "oh hey, small world moments over Chick-fil-A casual lunch turned into uncomfortable confessions when a few drinks loosened her tongue. Turns out Vanessa had been bragging for months about landing Jackson. She called him stupid rich and even more stupid, the co-worker told me, laughing nervously. Said all she had to do was cry about her rough childhood and he'd buy her anything. She literally said, the prenup was easy. Just act sweet and helpless. My lemonade had gone warm in my hand. I hadn't planned on doing anything with that information. Hadn't even known if I believed it. Until today. Until the hallway seating. Until guess you just don't count. Before leaving the hallway, I walked back to the gift table near the ballroom entrance. The coordinator was busy micromanaging the centerpieces, probably freaking out about rose petals being asymmetrical or whatever. I slid the small silver box right into the middle of the pile, nestled it between a KitchenAid mixer and a crystal decanter set. The tag read to Vanessa and Jackson in my neatest handwriting. Inside that box, underneath a discount picture frame from HomeGoods, was a folded note and printouts. Screenshots the coworker had nervously shown me. Text messages. Voice memos. Not speculation. Facts. I hadn't added a threat or dramatic message. Just 3 words, the truth matters. I stepped back, checked my reflection one final time in the decorative mirror by the coat check, and straightened my dress. My heartbeat was steady. Calm in a way that felt almost unfamiliar, like I'd been holding my breath for 26 years and finally remembered how to exhale. Then I turned and walked toward those front doors. The Asheville evening hit me with humidity and the smell of honeysuckle. The river reflected the venue's lights like scattered diamonds I didn't need to touch. Behind me, I could hear the faint sound of clapping starting up. The crowd cheering for a dance I no longer cared to witness. For the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel small. Didn't feel invisible. I reached the parking lot where my Honda Civic sat under a flickering streetlight, gravel crunching under my heels like punctuation marks ending a sentence I'd been writing since childhood. No dramatic exit speech. No final confrontation. Just the quiet sound of a car door closing and an engine starting. As I backed out of my parking spot, I looked back once at those glowing floor-to-ceiling windows, at the silhouettes moving and swaying behind glass, and I whispered to the empty car, let the truth do what I couldn't. Inside the ballroom, the party was hitting that sweet spot where everyone's had just enough champagne to forget their problems but not enough to cause them. The jazz band had switched to something smooth and low. Glasses clinked in toasts. The crowd pressed closer around the newlyweds on the dance floor. Vanessa practically glowed in that heavy designer gown, every inch the bride she'd been planning to be since we were kids playing dress-up. Jackson spun her once, twice, 3 times while phone cameras captured every angle, painting everything in that golden Instagram filter glow. From outside, through those tall windows, the whole scene looked like one of those snow globes you shake up. Perfect, sealed off, completely unreal. Then someone opened the silver box. It happened near the gift table where Mom's sister, my Aunt Diane, had volunteered to organize presents for photos. She'd been sorting through bows and cards, arranging things for that shot of the happy couple surrounded by generosity. Oh, let's have them open one now, she called out, holding up my silver box. Just for fun, for the photographer. Vanessa turned, laughing, that champagne flush on her cheeks. She tugged the ribbon free with her manicured nails. The paper fell away in whispers. The lid lifted. Inside sat that cheap picture frame and underneath it, the folded paper. Her hand stopped mid-reach. What is this? Jackson leaned in, curious. The note slid loose and landed face up on the white tablecloth. His eyes caught the printed text messages before she could snatch them away. He frowned, leaning closer, scanning the pale blue text bubbles printed in stark black and white. One sentence jumped out, clear as a punch to the gut, "He's so easy to manipulate. Cry a little and he'll sign anything I want." The music didn't stop immediately. It just sort of thinned out. The pianist missed a note. The bassist glanced up, sensing something shifting in the room's energy. Vanessa's fingers trembled against the paper. This isn't real. Someone's trying to. Her voice cracked mid-sentence. Jackson didn't respond. He just kept reading. Page after page. Each line worse than the last. Jokes about getting him to agree to the house purchase before the wedding. Plans to move her parents into the guest house once he's comfortable. References to his trust fund like it was an ATM with an easy PIN code. That same smirk she'd given me in the hallway, now preserved in text form, brittle and damning. Who sent this? Vanessa hissed, her voice dropping to something dangerous. Jackson's mother, Patricia, had been watching from her table near the front. She was old Charlotte Money, the kind of woman who could end your social life with a single phone call. When she heard my name whispered by one of the bridesmaids, her expression went from concern to something harder. She stood up, set down her wine glass with deliberate care, and crossed that dance floor with the slow confidence of someone who'd seen every con in the book. "I think you should finish reading before you start pointing fingers," Patricia said, her voice carrying that particular southern sharpness that sounds polite but cuts deep. "These messages were forwarded to me this morning by the hairstylist you hired. Apparently, they ended up in the wrong group chat." Vanessa's face lost all its color, like someone had pulled a plug and drained her out. "That's not possible. That's not. It's real, Vanessa." Jackson's voice had gone quiet. Flat. He turned over the final page. A screenshot of her text to a friend. "The house will be in my name by New Year's. Just gotta play the part a little longer." A collective gasp rippled through the guests like wind through wheat. Phones came out of pockets. The photographer lowered his camera slowly. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." Vanessa lunged for the papers. "You can't show people that." Patricia stepped between them smoothly, a barrier in a tasteful mother-of-the-groom dress. "Sweetheart, you showed it yourself the moment you hit send." That's when the screaming started. Not loud at first. More like air leaving a balloon too fast, that high-pitched whistle of something deflating. Vanessa stumbled backward, the train of her gown catching under her heel. "No. No, you don't understand. He's lying. This is my sister. Stephanie did this. She's always been jealous." Jackson's jaw went tight. "Stephanie didn't write these messages, Vanessa. She planted them. She's psychotic. She's been jealous her entire life." "Stop." The word cracked through the ballroom like a breaking branch. Patricia's voice wasn't loud, but it silenced everything. "You did this. You humiliated that girl today, put her by the kitchen doors like trash, and you thought nobody would ever see who you really are." Every face had turned toward them now. The band had completely stopped playing. A kid's voice piped up somewhere in the back, "Mommy, why is the bride crying?" Vanessa's perfect wedding was melting like cake left out in the sun, and she couldn't hold it together anymore. She spun toward our parents, desperation making her voice shrill. "Do something. Tell them this is fake." Mom stood near the head table, frozen like a deer in headlights, her champagne glass trembling in her hand so badly I'm surprised it didn't shatter. Dad stared at his dress shoes like they were the most fascinating things he'd ever seen. For the first time in my memory, neither of them jumped to defend Vanessa. "You knew," Jackson said quietly, but his voice shook with something that sounded like barely controlled rage. "You knew exactly what you were doing." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded document, and set it on the table next to the scattered screenshots. "This is an annulment petition. My lawyer filed it this morning. I already signed it." Vanessa stared at the paper like it might bite her. "You can't. Jackson, you can't humiliate me like this in front of everyone." "I'm not humiliating you," he said, his voice cracking at the edges. "You did that yourself." Someone near the sound booth finally cut the music completely. The silence that fell over that ballroom was so heavy you could feel it pressing on your eardrums. Then came the sound everyone would remember for years. The crystal frame hitting the marble floor, shattering into about 1,000 pieces that scattered like glitter under the chandelier light. Vanessa's voice came out broken and raw. "She's behind this. Stephanie's behind all of it. She's always hated me." Patricia exhaled slowly, a sound that somehow conveyed 30 years of dealing with people's nonsense. "Funny. The only thing your sister did was forward me the truth when I asked about the stylist's concerns." Outside in my car, I'd stopped with the engine idling, one hand on the gearshift. The glow from those ballroom windows flickered across the dark surface of the French Broad River like fireflies. I couldn't hear every word through the glass and distance, but I heard the scream. It came sharp and high-pitched, cutting through the evening air like a knife, followed by the dull sound of something crashing. The sound I'd been waiting my whole life to hear, not because I'm cruel, but because sometimes truth needs to be loud. Inside, Vanessa's mascara had started running down her cheeks in black rivers. "You'll regret this," she shouted, her voice breaking into something almost unrecognizable. "All of you will regret this." Jackson turned away, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his tuxedo jacket. No, Vanessa. You will. He walked off that dance floor with Patricia close behind him, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea, everyone desperate not to make eye contact. Mom finally moved, reaching for Vanessa's arm with a shaking hand. Sweetheart, maybe we should step outside, take a breath. Don't touch me. Vanessa yanked her arm away so hard she nearly fell. You all wanted this. You wanted me to fail. You never loved me enough. Her voice dissolved into sobs that sounded more like choking. Dad spoke for the first time that night, his voice quiet but clear enough to carry. You need to apologize to your sister. The words stunned everyone into stillness. Even Mom froze, her hand suspended in midair. But Vanessa only laughed, a sound so hollow and brittle it didn't reach her eyes. Apologize to her? She's not even really part of this family. Dad shook his head slowly, something sad and final in his expression. That's where you're wrong, Vanessa. That's where you've always been wrong. He didn't explain further. Just turned and followed the crowd toward the exit, his shoulders curved inward like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. By the time the venue staff started dimming the lights and sweeping up broken crystal from the floor, Vanessa sat alone under that chandelier in her $10,000 dress that now looked heavy and wrinkled and wrong. The bouquet had fallen beside her chair. The same hands that had pushed me aside her entire life now clutched at empty air, desperate for something solid to hold on to. She never saw me. I was already gone. Through my slightly fogged car window, I watched guests hurry out into the parking lot like someone had pulled a fire alarm. Whispers and shocked voices carried across the evening air. It's already all over Facebook. Did you see his mother's face? That poor guy. No, the other sister, Stephanie. Can you imagine? I didn't feel triumph exactly. More like the quiet after a storm passes. I rested both hands on the steering wheel and thought about that hallway. The smell of gardenias and industrial cleaner. The folding chair that squeaked every time I shifted my weight. How it all started with being seated by the kitchen doors. How it ended with the truth laid out on white tablecloth for everyone who'd ever looked through me like I was invisible. Justice doesn't always come with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it whispers, now they see you. The scream faded into the North Carolina night. The river went still again, dark and glassy. I turned the key, and my headlights washed over gravel and asphalt. I drove away from the sound of my sister's perfect world collapsing behind me, and I didn't look back again. By the time I reached Charlotte, the sky was starting to lighten at the edges, that pre-dawn gray that makes everything look like a watercolor painting. The highway signs blurred past in my peripheral vision. The hum of my tires on asphalt sounded steady and low, like white noise after years of shouting you've learned to tune out. My phone had been buzzing non-stop in the cup holder since mile marker 40. 18 missed calls from Mom. 5 from Dad. 2 from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't check any of them. The quiet felt more valuable than any explanation I could possibly give. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex and climbed the stairs to my third-floor unit, the whole place smelled faintly like the vanilla candle I'd left burning and that particular smell Charlotte gets after rain. The city outside my window was waking up, headlights starting to crowd the streets below. I hung my burgundy dress on the back of my bedroom door and just stared at it for a minute. The color was still perfect, completely untouched by everything that had happened. It looked like armor I hadn't realized I'd been wearing. My phone lit up with a new message. Please answer, Stephanie. We didn't know it was this bad. That was Mom. She always said that when things finally fell apart, we didn't know. But she had known. Every time she told me to stay quiet at dinner. Every time she'd laughed at Vanessa's mean jokes like they were adorable. Every time she'd said, "You're fine, honey," when I clearly wasn't. I set the phone face down on my kitchen counter and opened my laptop instead. A map of the Carolina coast blinked back at me, dotted with tiny beach towns I'd never visited. I picked one at random, somewhere near Wilmington, and clicked book now on a little cottage rental. A week by the ocean sounded like the definition of peace. Before I could close the laptop, I stepped out onto my balcony. The Charlotte air smelled cleaner than it had in years, or maybe I was just breathing different. Across the way, the morning sun was starting to cut the skyline into sections of gold and shadow. They could keep their apologies, their explanations, their carefully edited versions of what happened and why. I had my truth now. For the first time in my 26 years, silence didn't mean being invisible. It meant being free. At my sister's wedding, they seated me by the kitchen doors like I was part of the catering staff. This morning, I'm sitting on my balcony watching the sunrise over Charlotte. Same silence, completely different meaning. Back then, it felt like humiliation. Now it feels like peace. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't a scream or a confrontation or a dramatic speech. It's the sound of your own footsteps walking away from people who never valued them in the first place. They thought I'd always stay in that hallway, waiting for their approval like a dog begging for scraps. But I don't wait anymore. I don't beg for a seat at someone else's table. I build my own. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mom. Your father wants to talk. He says he's sorry. Please, Stephanie. I picked up the phone, read it twice, and then typed back, I'm taking some time. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Then I turned off my phone completely. The sky had gone from grey to pink to that particular shade of blue that makes you believe in fresh starts. I made coffee, real coffee from the French press instead of my usual instant, and took it back out to the balcony. Below me, Charlotte was waking up. Morning joggers. Dog walkers. People heading to Sunday breakfast at Price's Chicken Coop or Amelie's. Normal people living normal lives where family drama didn't define every interaction. I thought about Vanessa sitting in that ballroom, her perfect day shattered worse than that crystal frame. Part of me felt bad for half a second. The sister I'd grown up with, the one who used to let me sleep in her room during thunderstorms before everything got complicated. But that girl was gone, if she'd ever really existed. The woman who put me by the kitchen doors wasn't someone I needed to protect anymore. My laptop was still open on the coffee table. That little cottage near Wilmington stared back at me from the screen. White shutters. A porch with rocking chairs. Walking distance to the beach. I clicked confirm reservation and felt something loosen in my chest. If you've ever been pushed aside by the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, know this, walking away isn't weakness. It's not giving up. It's choosing yourself after years of being everyone's last choice. It's the beginning of freedom. I finished my coffee as the sun climbed higher, painting my balcony in warm light. In a few hours, I'd pack a bag. Throw in some books I'd been meaning to read. Maybe that journal I'd bought but never started because who had time for self-reflection when you were too busy trying to earn love from people who'd already decided you weren't worth it? The truth didn't just set me free. It gave me permission to leave. My phone stayed silent and dark on the counter. Eventually, I'd deal with the fallout. Eventually, there'd be conversations and maybe even apologies that actually meant something. But not today. Today was mine. I walked back inside, pulled out my suitcase, and started packing for the coast. And somewhere in Asheville, in that big expensive manor by the river, my sister was probably waking up to the wreckage of her perfect life. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I'd spent 26 years cleaning up messes I didn't make. This time, I was choosing the ocean instead.